Halo Top, not because it tasted great, but because it made me feel less guilty. I could trust myself with a pint of Halo Top, but if you gave me a pint of Ben & Jerry's, I don't know if I could still trust myself. And to me, that was a problem. I wanted to become that person that ate for quality versus quantity. All right, hello you guys. So today's topic is centered on intuitive eating and misconceptions about intuitive eating in the fitness industry, or really anywhere, but I'm saying the fitness industry in particular because that's the field I work in, and I was once very much a part of the macro tracking community, the physique building community, and so forth. No, I was never a bodybuilding competitor, but I very much trained that way and I lived my life that way. Now, before we get into this is not meant to bash bodybuilders. It's not meant to bash people who track macros. This is an educational piece and it's coming from my experience and my expertise. I'm a certified intuitive eating counselor. I got my minor in nutrition. No, I'm not an RDN. I don't do practices that registered dietitians do. I stay in my scope. But I am somebody who's involved in the fitness industry, and I see a lot of, when you've had an eating disorder and you've manipulated yourself through things like macro tracking and always having physique goals, you see red flags. And so I'm speaking to a certain population, okay? I'm not for everyone, just like you're not for everyone. But I do just want to clear some things up about intuitive eating. So if anything, just take this as an educational component. When I'm talking about intuitive eating, I'm talking about the practice that was developed by two registered dietitians. So Evelyn and Elise, make sure I'm pointing to the right people. They specialize in obesity, they specialize in eating disorders. I think Evelyn was the dietitian for Good Morning America for some time, but they're both very respectable people and they've been doing this for a while. Intuitive eating was developed in 1997. I'll have to check. I'll put the correct date here at the bottom. And it has a lot of research backed up behind it, and it's the body of research is growing behind it. And I'm super excited about it because I love science. I'm very science-based, but I'm also very experience-based. So let's discuss more about it. Intuitive eating gets thrown around on Instagram, social media all the time about, how can somebody do intuitive eating? They don't know, or their body doesn't know what their goals are. And by goals, we probably mean physique goals. Well, that is point numero uno, number one. If you wish to become a true intuitive eater, you gotta let go of the fantasies of what you want your body to look like. As somebody who did macro tracking for years, I was either maintenance, cutting, bulking, or growing. Don't have to call it bulking, whatever. And there was always this physique I was reaching towards. And if you constantly have this goal of what you want your physique to look like, the way you view food and the way you choose your food is going to be different than if you're listening to your body and your intuition. Breaking up with the fantasy of what you want your body to look like was the hardest thing for me, and it still is. I still work on it actively. Being a fitness professional, I have grown in this industry that really praises image. I hate to say it, but you feel like you get more respected if you look a certain way. And so when I did my macro tracking, specifically my last year of grad school, I dropped 10 pounds. I had some pretty good lean muscle mass on me, and I got a lot of compliments, and it felt good. Like, it was addicting. People were like, oh, you look really good and you're so strong, and but not knowing that I was manipulating my body. I had come far from my eating disorder, but I was still reaching after a physique that wasn't necessarily mine. point number 2. You may lose weight with intuitive eating. You may gain weight. If you have somebody that has been binging, overeating, emotional eating, you might lose weight with intuitive eating. Through the guided practices, through working with a certified counselor, through working with a dietitian who's certified in intuitive eating, you may lose weight. But you also might gain weight if you've been fighting this body that wants to be at its natural size. So once again, myself, when I stopped doing my macro tracking, I gained some weight. I went back to my set point, and there's a whole bunch of research on set point, and I went up a little because my body thought, well, hell no, like if we're gonna do this dieting thing again, I want you to gain a little bit extra weight above your set point. And then after a couple months, I went back down to what my body comfortably wants me to be around. Now, really quick with the scale, I don't suggest doing the scale if you're coming out of an eating disorder ever. You don't ever really have to go on the scale, but it's something that fascinates me, and I'm pretty good at normalizing things and not being super judgmental. It's just interesting to see how my weight plays around with intuitive eating. Okay, back to the main part though. Intuitive eating, you might lose weight, you might gain weight, you might just stay at the same weight. It's very interesting, this topic of health at every size, and how we're seeing through more and more research that people can very much be healthy above what health practitioners think is not healthy. Point number 3, you use your brain with intuitive eating, okay? Everyone, and once again, this intuitive eating gets thrown around on social media where all of a sudden you'll see somebody go to the grocery store and just raid with their favorite play foods. Most people call play food junk food. I refuse to do that. I call it play food because it's playful for the soul. And so anyway, that's not fully embracing intuitive eating. Okay, somebody with binge eating disorder, or somebody who's coming off a binge eating disorder or has binging tendencies, I would not recommend going out to the store and buying everything that you deem as a play food or playing around with your fear food. You know, you would do that in a more particular way, and the way I've done that with clients is based off the client and their background. So I'm not going to have a client go buy every food they've ever feared or they've ever binged on. Like, that can really mess with somebody psychologically. Like, it's baby steps. So anyway, you use your brain with intuitive eating. That's one way of using your brain. Another example, so a lot of my clients are crossovers. They work with me in personal training, or they're involved in the fitness industry, but now they want to become intuitive eaters. I'll teach them things like, fat is a little bit slower digesting. So say you have an hour to 45 minutes before your workout, you might want to veer away from eating food that contains a good amount of fat because it's slow digesting. It can feel very uncomfortable. Carbs are a wonderful source of energy. They're your body's main fuel. Let's try to have some more carbs pre and post workout so we can restore those glycogen stores and can give you energy during your workout. Protein, well, that's like a no-brainer. Protein is not only optimal for muscle recovery and sustaining, but proper cell function. And so like I educate individuals, depending where they are, on macronutrients of using your brain. So let's say you're not completely hungry, but you're going to go out to a concert, and then after the concert you're going to grab a late night dinner, and you're like, well, I'm not that hungry before the concert though. But you're using your brain thinking, well, the concert is, let's say, 4 hours long. And you're like, okay, I probably will be hungry, like really ravenous by the end of it. And that's through a lot of experimentation, find what works for you. So I'm going to eat something that's more protein dense, or eat something with all of the macros in it to feel satisfied and to make sure that I'm not just like starving by the end of the concert. That's still intuitive eating. So yes, you are using your brain. I think this is point number 4, I want to say. What if you're not eating enough? So there's 2 different types of people this could really veer to. First off, if somebody is recovering from anorexia nervosa, they're not going to go into intuitive eating. that is the goal, the latter goal, but they're not going to go into intuitive eating right away because their hunger and fullness signals are way off. You know, somebody who's going through that needs to go see a registered dietitian who specializes in eating disorders. Okay. Second person, maybe it's somebody who does a bunch of CrossFit or is an athlete. They might need more of a meal plan then. Intuitive eating, rigorous exercise can throw off your hunger. So it goes back to point number 3 where we're using our brains. Myself included, if I do something like a really rigorous workout, I actually don't feel that hungry afterwards. It throws off my hunger levels, but I know, hey, you need to eat to replenish yourself and to make sure that you can restore your energy fuels and decrease soreness for the next workout. An athlete might need to get more of a meal plan, and so then they could team up with somebody who is a certified intuitive eating counselor, but they would go see a registered dietitian who specializes in sports performance. At these points though, I'm a huge believer in experience, and so I'm going to tell you a little bit about my background briefly with macros, as briefly as it can be. But basically, I posted about this on Instagram, but the reason I fully stopped tracking macros was, well, first off, the physique goals. Second off, I had binge eating disorder, and for somebody who's had binge eating disorder, treating yourself like a competitive bodybuilder is not a healthy route to go, in my opinion, but I can see this in a lot of other individuals. I like control. I have more of a tendency to want to perfect things and really get after things. And so eating, back when I had binge eating disorders, my binges were for a couple different reasons, but one of them was when I was just so strung out on perfectionism. Eating and binging was a way for me to just be messy in my life and just, to just be messy and to let go. And so with macro tracking, I could still eat my play foods, but in a controlled manner. But when I got rid of MyFitnessPal, or if I stepped away from my food scale for a week, or I went home for vacations, I felt so out of control because I felt out of my routine, and that would cause me to overeat. Not necessarily binge, there's a difference, but overeat, but still it didn't make me feel good. Eating Halo Top, not because it tasted great, but because it made me feel less guilty. I could trust myself with a pint of Halo Top, but if you gave me a pint of Ben & Jerry's, I don't know if I could still trust myself. And to me, that was a problem. I wanted to become that person that ate for quality versus quantity. I wanted to eat foods that sounded good. I also wanted to be able to pick foods that sounded nutrient dense and fulfilling and sustainable, but really tune into my body and trust my body with those signals. I didn't want to just keep eating cauliflower pancakes because they were low carb and macro friendly. I wanted to be able to eat pancakes and move on. Eat when I'm hungry, stop when I'm full. I wanted to learn more about my emotional eating. To learn more about like what I was really distracting myself from with the macro tracking and the bodybuilding splits and making my life be a lot about the gym and food, which once again, to some people that is their truth, but loneliness and being unsure of myself, especially with starting my own business centered on my intuitive eating certification and personal training, there was a lot of self-doubt, and so the macro tracking, the bodybuilding was a way to cover up that loneliness. And I wanted to know how I could deal with that without using food or without manipulating my body, how I could deal with those things. And so it's been a very, very good self journey, and this is what I teach my clients about. Is not just about the food. It's a very spiritual experience. It's about living a higher quality of life and happiness. I hope this was helpful. I look forward to doing more videos on intuitive eating, especially fitness related. And yeah, you guys take care.